averaging 70% from the free throw line. Kevin Durant is 85 plus. The brother is a marksman extraordinaire.
No
and when I look at it from that perspective, I just think offensively there are levels to this, and LeBron ain't on that level. It's no knock against LeBron. It speaks to the level of eliteness that Kevin Durant has. He's one player.
But the Laker team lose all these close games in the fourth quarter. We couldn't win.
Something just happened in the LeBron James conversation that almost never does. Two voices from completely opposite corners of the basketball world landed on the exact same take. And not just any two voices, Stephen A. Smith and Magic Johnson. The moment that clip started circulating, fans didn't just react, they exploded. Because when two people who rarely agree suddenly align on a criticism of LeBron James, it doesn't land like a regular take. It lands heavier. It feels harder to dismiss. It feels like something that actually has to be addressed. And that's precisely why this moment is trending the way it is. Because it's not just about what was said, it's about who said it. Stephen A. has built his entire brand on passionate, emotionally charged opinions. Magic Johnson comes from a completely different place, a legacy perspective. Someone who lived at the highest level of the game and knows what true greatness actually demands. These two don't operate from the same angle. They don't usually arrive at the same destination. So when both of them point to the same concern about LeBron, fans are caught between two instincts: take it seriously or push back even harder. And for most of them, the choice was clear. They pushed back.
I mean, how many times, listen, like I told you before, we could joke around and disagree about the GOAT conversation between MJ and LeBron James. LeBron James is one of the greatest top 2-3 players in the history of this damn game. He is that sensational. I feel sorry for him so many times when I see him kicking it out to three-point shooters and they can't make it.
The conversation itself zeroed in on something that has followed LeBron James throughout his entire career. Not his talent, not his resume, not his longevity. Nobody serious is questioning any of that. But when the topic shifts to mentality in big moments, that specific idea of being an assassin, being the one who takes complete control when everything is on the line, that's exactly where Stephen A. and Magic found common ground. And the moment that idea was put back under the spotlight, it triggered every debate you can think of. Here's what most people aren't saying out loud, though. This isn't a new criticism, not even close. This is one of the oldest and most persistent conversations in LeBron's career. But it keeps resurfacing because moments keep giving it new life. A viral clip, a late-game decision, even body language during a critical possession. Fans are constantly scanning for evidence, either to reinforce that narrative or tear it apart completely. That cycle never really stops. But here's why this particular moment cut through the noise differently. When a regular analyst raises this question, it's easy to write off. When Stephen A. says it, people expect it. It's part of his brand. But when Magic Johnson, someone who actually won at the highest level and lived inside those pressure moments, even slightly leans into that same criticism, it carries a different kind of weight. It's harder to ignore, and fans felt that immediately.
I need to be one of the first people to make sure that I say that. LeBron James had never in his career been a third option until this year. Yet he accepted it and was still the leader and the winner that he was.
Stephen A. framed it the way he always does. High energy, direct, and straight to the point. He questioned whether LeBron consistently embraces those defining must-have moments the same way other all-time greats did. No hesitation, no softening it. And then Magic responded, calmer in delivery but equally impactful. He echoed something similar, not as a dismissal of LeBron, not as disrespect, but as an honest acknowledgement that LeBron's greatness expresses itself differently than the players he's constantly measured against. For a lot of fans, that framing felt like a backhanded compliment, and honestly, it's easy to see why. Because here's where things get complicated. The moment someone introduces the idea of a different kind of greatness, fans don't sit with that nuance for long. they immediately convert it into a comparison debate. And we all know exactly where that road leads. Michael Jordan gets brought up, Kobe Bryant gets brought up, and just like that, the conversation is no longer about LeBron being one of the greatest players to ever play the game. It becomes about whether he's the greatest, full stop. And when you're living inside that conversation, when your legacy is being weighed against the two most protected names in basketball history, every small critique stops being small. It gets picked up, amplified, and turned into something that follows you into every single highlight, every playoff exit, every late-game possession. Nothing stays minor when you're LeBron James.
Vogel's going to take some of this blame.
No question.
Right? They're going to point the finger at him. And this is what's really bothers me, Molly and Stephen A. This season was never about winning.
And the fans were not having it. One side came out swinging at Stephen A., arguing he always finds an angle to nitpick LeBron regardless of what's actually happening. But the bigger shock for many was Magic. Because when someone from LeBron's own circle of legends speaks critically, it stops feeling like media noise, it starts feeling like insider truth. That's what made this moment hit differently. Here's what nobody is really saying, though. LeBron might be the only player in basketball history where being too unselfish can actually be framed as a weakness. Think about that for a moment. Most players get criticized for forcing bad shots, playing inefficiently, or refusing to trust their teammates. LeBron gets criticized for trusting his teammates too much. That's how rare his situation actually is. His basketball IQ consistently pushes him toward the right play, but fans don't always want the right play. They want the dramatic one. And even at this stage of his career, the numbers don't lie. In what may have been his final game as a Laker, though retirement seems highly unlikely, he put up 24 points on 44% shooting with 14 rebounds in his 23rd season as the all-time leading scorer in NBA history. Credit has to be given where it's due. But this is exactly where perception becomes just as powerful as performance. LeBron can execute the smartest, most efficient play on the floor, and if it doesn't look like dominance, it gets questioned anyway. That's the line he's been walking his entire career. And that's precisely why comments from voices like Stephen A. and Magic land the way they do. They don't attack his stats, they attack the perception. And perception in today's sports landscape shapes legacy just as much as any championship. Part of why fans are reacting so intensely is because they've been here before. They've defended LeBron against this exact argument for years. They've pointed to his game winners, his playoff performances, his elimination game heroics. They've constructed detailed cases for why this narrative is unfair. So when it resurfaces, especially from voices this credible, it doesn't just feel frustrating, it feels like déjà vu, like the conversation is permanently stuck on repeat. But here's the twist worth sitting with. The fact that this debate is still alive after everything LeBron has accomplished might actually reveal more about his impact than it does about any flaw. Because no other player is held to this kind of emotional standard. Nobody is debating whether other stars feel dominant enough in the moment. With LeBron, it has never been purely about stats or wins. It's about how those moments look, how they feel, and how they measure up against legends from completely different eras of the game. And this is where it gets even more layered, because Magic Johnson isn't just any voice in this conversation. He represents a generation of basketball where a superstar's identity was built around control, command, and leadership when everything was on the line. When Magic analyzes LeBron, he's not just breaking down film, he's measuring him against an entirely different basketball philosophy. And that gap in philosophy is where a lot of the disconnect lives. Stephen A., on the other hand, takes that philosophical difference and turns it into a headline. That's his role. That's why his voice carries the weight it does in moments like this. When he says something, it doesn't stay contained. It spreads immediately and becomes part of the larger conversation before the day is over. Here's another layer that's being overlooked.
Fans aren't just defending LeBron, they're defending their own beliefs about basketball. Because if LeBron's approach is seen as missing something, then every argument they've made about him for years gets called into question too. That's why the reaction feels so personal. It's not only about him, it's about what he represents to the people who've invested in his story. And sitting behind all of this, quietly, is the GOAT debate, always ready to reignite the moment someone questions LeBron's mentality. Clips got pulled, quotes got compared. The internet did exactly what it always does. It took one shared opinion and turned it into a full-scale argument within hours. This is where things get genuinely complicated for LeBron's long-term narrative. Moments like these stick, not always because they're accurate, but because they're repeated. And the more something is repeated, the more it shapes how people remember. That's just how modern sports media operates. But at the same time, this entire situation proves something undeniable. LeBron James is still the center of the basketball universe. At this point in his career, everything he does and everything said about him still drives the biggest conversations in the sport. That kind of relevance isn't accidental. It's the product of a career that has genuinely mattered at every single stage. So here's the real question. If a legend like Magic Johnson and a media force like Stephen A. Smith are both pointing at the same thing, is there actually something there that fans aren't willing to confront? Or is this just another example of LeBron being held to a standard that no other player in the history of the game has ever been asked to meet? One thing is certain, this debate isn't going anywhere, and the louder it gets, the more it shapes how this entire era of basketball will eventually be remembered.